Hey everyone, in this lecture, we're gonna put it all together. So, let me say something before I really get into the slide, because apparently I forgot the agenda for this one. Really, this is the content it's one of the first big pieces of content toward the end of the semester that I would have loved to be able to start in on, like way early in the semester, but there are certain things I just have to explain to you before we really get to this stuff, right? And what we are looking at here is a cultural tipping point, right? So the majority of Americans report that climate change is, quote, a major threat to the country, right? This is 59% of Americans doing it right now. And that is actually huge. It's actually really, really, really big. You don't get 59% of Americans to do anything. Almost every modern presidential election has been like 55 to like 45, and that would be a landslide situation. 59 it's a big deal. Most people are on board with this, because also note the word major threat as opposed to threat, right? Like, it's not, most people think it's an important thing. Now, sure, we do have a tendency to get very upset about things in cycles, right? We get very upset about something that goes away, then we get upset that it goes away, blah, 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 blah. And that is called the issue attention cycle. And the reason why that occurs with other phenomena that are not climate change is people get bored, or the media searches for some new and terrible, usually, problem. Additionally, people get very upset when the government can't just like press a button and fix a problem. That's all part of the issue attention cycle. And then finally, compassion fatigue is also a big deal in terms of issue attention cycles. This is the inability to get concerned about a subject because of an overabundance of issues present in modern media. There are certain moments in our national history, like immediately following 9/11, significant portions of the population were very much in this mode after Trump was elected in 2016, where to certain groups of people, everything looks like a catastrophic problem all the time, right? When there is a moment of compassion fatigue, and then because of that, people become unable to really extend themselves in that way. But what I am telling you is that climate change is outside of this piece. Concern for climate change has fluctuated over time, but that concern remains high over time. So it has remained consistently important to over half of the population for the last 75 years. The only times when it has dipped was after 9/11 and after the Great Recession in 2008. And it has consistently bounced back. You do not see that in other issues. Even with something as persistent as abortion, that there definitely are groups in the population that get really upset about it for extended periods of time, and then it seems like it never goes away. Climate change is bigger than even that big divisive issue. So we see that on this slide. Here we have, and please excuse the original version of this figure. It is actually a very good piece of information, but presented rather poorly. That's one of the reasons why I stopped using the book that this came from. You will observe then that the red line means that the majority of Americans, or as we see here, 61% of Americans in 1985, believe that the environment should be given priority over the economy, right? Common conversation people bring up whenever they're trying to say, well, we can't do that because it would hurt business. That's what people say when they don't want to be environmental, right? Well, starting in 1985, at least this data goes this far back. It does go. This goes back to the 60s at the very earliest, at the very latest. But in 85, 61% said that the environment should be given priority over economic growth, over the interest of big business. That went up steadily until 1991. And then it went down, and then it went steadily up until 2001. We see a slight dip there during the really the crisis following 9/11, but it never went to be to the majority of Americans saying, yes, we should be giving business priority over the environment. This is a really as consistent as trends get in sociology. I really can't emphasize that enough. And then it builds again up until 2007, and then it starts going down again right after the 2008 economic downturn. That was almost everyone watching this was at least kids at that time. A lot of people lost their homes during that period, and a lot of investments bottomed out. My family was hit by that a little bit, but not as bad as some. So we see how there was a moment, right, from about 2008 to about 2010 that the business was seen as being more important than the environment, and then the environment dipped again for another, what's that? It's about 3 years or so. So there was about, from 2008 until 2013, a 7-year lapse in this really very consistent trend among Americans that the environment needs to be given priority over business. And if you look at the numbers going up to 2024, which I should include in this, considering that I've already changed this enough because in their infinite wisdom, the people that put it together decided 2 blue lines was a good chart. This is a big deal. This is a huge deal. This shows that most Americans care most of the time that the environment is very important. And that is one of the key glimmering pieces of hope in all of this. However, though, there are other countries that feel this a whole lot stronger. The question here being, what is it with the United States, where Greece, South Korea, Mexico put it at 90%, 86%, 80%. Argentina puts it at 73%, as in 73% of the population surveyed said the environment is very important, is consistently very important. Now, those that are not bolded are the countries that are saying the environment is not the top threat, right? And if I remember the data that I pulled this from, that France was undergoing some what's the best word for it? Some social security issues, basically pensions for older people. So that's why that wasn't the top priority for France at the moment of this particular survey. But look how high those numbers are. Look at the countries. These are a lot of these countries are the ones in the world that we consider our colleagues on the global scale. And all of them are considering environmental issues to be very important, and those ones that are bolded see it as being the top threat. But what is it about that 41% of Americans that do not see environmentalism as a major threat? What on earth is it that makes this country, who spawned, you know what? I kind of like Guy Fieri, quite frankly. He knows what Americans like and he gives it to them, you know? And there's something, there is something beautiful to that, even though it's kind of killing us. And like, this can be a really beautiful country. So why are we this weird about the environment? The difference between the United States and other countries is to be very upfront about it, conservative white males. It's what it is. And I don't like to identify very specific groups of people with very specific political views. I don't think it's fair, but we have a real phenomena happening here. So as responsible sociologists, we have to look at that problem and see, hey, what's happening there? So this chart from the book that made all its charts all in blue, but this one's actually readable, is showing people by education level. Climate change is happening, climate change is caused by humans, and climate change is concerning. So in the happening category, which is the first two categories, we have, among high school or less, conservative white males with either a high school education or less than high school education. At the time of the survey, which would have been in 2020, 40% said they believe climate change is happening. Among conservatives, you see a higher percentage, 45%. So that says that that really what that says to me is that conservatives with a high school education, and only a high school education, they have a harder time believing that climate change is happening. But then all other American adults, you see that's closer to 70%, right? Which is, that's really pretty good for our cause. And then we see on the next one over that the more education people get, the more they believe that climate change is happening. And we see that trend through the rest of this, this chart as well. Then we move over to climate change is human caused. Our conservative white males who have only had a high school education, they have 30% believe it is human caused. And among all conservatives then, we have 35% believing it is human caused. And then all other US adults, 55%. Now, this is something important to point out because this is very much a generational divide. I don't think there are very many people at all in the Gen Z / Gen Alpha category that are denying that climate change is human caused. I think that's kind of a cultural element that is fading pretty quickly from our society. But now let's jump over one more to, is climate change a reason to worry? Conservative white males, high school or less, 30%. Conservatives, getting close to 40%. And then all other US adults there, that's about 60%. And then some college or more. This is a weird category. This is a weird category. And you can see this a little bit in the others. But check it out. If you compare high school or less to some college or more and you look at just conservatives versus conservative white males. So we're really talking just about conservatives here. And maybe I could even take out all other US adults because really they're not part of this phenomena. But it appears here that the more education that conservative white males get, the less likely they are to believe that climate change is human caused or a reason to worry. So that's wild. That doesn't make any sense if you don't know anything about this particular phenomena. Why would it be that a group of people understand science less or claim to understand, they just don't get it after they've had more education? Anthropologist Mary Douglas actually explains this phenomena quite well And she makes the argument that all human cultural values can fall onto two broad spectra, ranging from hierarchical to egalitarian, and then from individualist to communitarian. What does that mean exactly? We'll work through it in the following slides. Hierarchical individuals believe that society should be arranged into a hierarchy where some people deserve more than other people because those at the top earned it. That's how it usually looks like from an American perspective. Certainly, aristocracies or empires or monarchies also had these elements, but the way it looks in the United States is those who are at the top earned their way to be there. Very much the pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of concept. These attitudes in the United States would look like, if you want to live a comfortable life, you need to work hard. That is a hierarchical statement. Anyone in the United States can succeed if they pull themselves up by their bootstraps. I don't know if anyone's had bootstraps in the last 80 years, but that's beside the point. The egalitarian individual believes that everyone should be treated equally and enjoy similar lived experiences. And this attitude does also absolutely exist in the United States. American cultural values in this regard would be everyone should have access to low-cost, high-quality healthcare. We certainly don't have that in this country, but there are many, many people who do believe that. That is an egalitarian statement. Similarly, the statement, our national parks are for everybody, that is also an American egalitarian statement. The individualist, then, believes that individuals have the right to determine their own behavior. The American cultural values in this regard would be, it's the right of all Americans to keep and bear arms. I'm pretty sure I used the wrong form of bear there, but I'm sorry about that. But bears with guns is a little bit funny. You can't tell me to be quiet. I have the freedom of speech. Everyone has the right to their opinion, right? These are all individualist ideological concepts. And then the communitarian concept is the belief that community and the public is more important than the needs of the individual. This is not quite as big in the United States. We don't have as long of a history with this. The American cultural values in this regard during COVID would have been everyone should be vaccinated and wear masks properly so that we can protect people with compromised immune systems from COVID-19. Certainly everyone didn't agree with that one and go along with it, right? Similarly, it is proper to fund our public schools so that our society remains well educated. Again, not everyone believes these things, but when Americans are communitarian, this is what it looks like. There is a lot of, it's a pretty good historic example. It's not a perfect historic example because a lot of people actually fought it quite a lot. When in World War II, we had to ration supplies for the war effort, that was also a statement of communitarianism, and that specifically was being driven by the government. Thus, the hierarchical individualists, who, as we talked about, are conservative white men, tend to view environmental degradation as less significant, right? So we see that right here. With the hierarchical individualist, now these numbers in and of themselves don't mean much. They're just kind of to gauge them against each other. It's to gauge risk perception. So 2.8 doesn't mean really very much then it's lower than 3.06. I guess refer to your statistics class if you want to talk about that kind of variable. But anyway, we see very clearly the hierarchical individualist has the least concern for the environment, with the hierarchical communitarian having the second least, the egalitarian individualist being the third, and then the egalitarian communitarian being the person who appears to be the most concerned with the environment at this moment. So why then are we categorizing white American men in this way? Why do they fall perfectly into the set of this categorization? Well, it falls really heavily into those things that traditionally we have called traditional American values. When you say traditional American values, really what you're talking about is hierarchical individualist values. A rugged individualist, someone who can absolutely take care of themselves and doesn't need other people to help them. You can't tell me what to do. This is America. Now, arguably, sometimes I do yell things like, I don't yell it, but I really think it sometimes. I'll admit that right there. Sometimes I do. American exceptionalism. The United States is the greatest country in the world. You could definitely see if somebody earnestly believed that, then they would be less willing to go along with some sort of climate accord that the UN, for example, sponsored. The way things are, or the way things used to be, that is ideal. There was a moment when America was absolutely great and perfect, right? It is the Make America Great Again concept, right? Regardless of politics, right? That somehow we should try to go back to the way it was in the 1950s, and we're imagining in the 1950s everything was perfect, which it absolutely was not. These all are conservative values, and they are also hierarchical individualist values. Thus, efforts to slow climate change often challenge the opinions of white men with this very specific cultural identity. So what? My so what here is that your cranky uncle, my cranky uncle's name is Danny. When your cranky uncle thinks that it's a bunch of, I'll use Danny's words, when he thinks it's a bunch of bullshit, right? It is earnestly not that these people hate the planet. They don't want you to roast to death, or their children to roast to death. It is that they are not connecting the pieces in their brains is what's happening, because they believed so thoroughly that it challenges their belief structure is really the thing, and that is deeply uncomfortable. And then you tie into the fact that a lot of these guys aren't very in touch with their feelings and don't go to therapy. Not all of them. A lot of them don't go to therapy. None of them I know go to therapy. That is our dilemma. That is a not the only, but a major portion of what is wrong with America. And if you understand our collective history, it can be very easy to dismiss the emotional needs of white men, right? Being a white man, I will fully say that we do kind of deserve it. We were horrible to people for hundreds of years, and no one challenged us. And if there was a lot of pure justice in the world, I'd be really afraid, quite frankly. But the reality of the matter is that there are a lot of conservative white men in our society, and a lot of other people that aren't necessarily going to go along. And we need, given our political climate, as many people as possible to be as committed as possible to the solutions that we are going to need, and it is going to have to go beyond politics. It is not a Democrat thing. It is not a Republican thing. This is a people who are living problem, right? And people who want the species to continue problem. We really need as many people as possible to be on our side, and we can't just dismiss people. We're gonna need that. We're gonna need their help too. But we are at an environmental tipping point, and physics and chemistry simply does not care about our politics. But are we? Is this the tipping point? Why wasn't the late 1980s the tipping point when they truly started to understand what would happen when the ice caps melt? Why wasn't it, say, 2010 when we really started to see the more obvious extremes in temperatures around the world and in the United States? Why won't it be in 2050? Why won't it be in 2100 or whatever we call that year when we get to it, right? Why is now the cultural tipping point? Isn't that an interesting question? What I'm saying here is things are getting worse, but things have been getting worse for quite some time now. The reason why then it looks like everything is on fire, and some things are on fire, don't get me wrong, is because our society's gauge of climate anxiety is notching up and higher and higher and higher. And I strongly believe, and I have good evidence to believe this, that is a good thing. It makes you feel bad. And I really hate that so many young people feel a very high degree of climate anxiety to the point where it's incredibly hard for them to deal with. But the fact that many people, a lot of people, are feeling great degrees of climate anxiety suggests that we are going to shift due to something called relative deprivation theory. Within the sociological theory of social movements, we observe that people have to perceive themselves to be oppressed or to be in danger before they're going to do anything about it, right? And the fact that so many people and our society and culture at large are really feeling we are actively at threat, that is a good thing. It is a good thing. The issue is that you need to, and we all need to, those of us who truly care, need to keep that in check, right? We know there's a problem. And there's not going to be the problem isn't going to stop by the time any of us are dead, right? We need to hold it together so that we can set the blueprints for those who are going to come after us, whether we have kids or not. So while it's unpleasant, climate anxiety is very important for driving environmental social change in our world today. And climate change is causing people to act. Climate change is causing people to demand electric vehicles, and hopefully eventually they'll start fueling those electric vehicles off sustainable sources. That's complicated. And it is the driving force between the shift in values that we're seeing. And this rising anxiety is critical for driving the dialogue of climate change itself. So this is what's called a paradigm shift. The paradigm shift is occurring between the world as it was, the world, don't you look, the slides are really pulling everything together, the world that was under environmental domination, to the world as it is going to be once everyone is fully acting on their climate anxiety, right? Once we move over to the paradigm of environmental concern, this moment that we are all feeling right now is called a paradigm shift. It is a moment in time when an academic discipline or society changes their ways of viewing things. And once a paradigm shift occurs, there is no going back. And there are many very sophisticated examples of this, but I'm going to give you a visual one. And this is not an endorsement of FedEx. I honestly don't think FedEx is any better than UPS. And the US Postal Service honestly treats their people much better. But that's beside the point. The FedEx logo, if you are not familiar, some of you know exactly what I'm talking about when I said FedEx logo, you will note in the white space between the E and the X, there's an arrow there. If you didn't know that, look at that arrow. Do you see the arrow? Now you're never going to not unsee the arrow. Huh. That's a paradigm shift. It's a very small, minor paradigm shift, but it's a way that you're seeing things, right? And at the end of the paradigm shift that we are in, the people who don't see, who thinks we can keep dominating the planet, will be ununderstandable to the people in the future. Just like they're hard for us to understand too. This is a moment when society as a whole is changing its thinking, and that is very difficult and very frustrating, and these types of things always have been. But we have gone on and we have made the world a better place due to it. So, at the start of a paradigm shift, we tend to hold on to those old beliefs and those old values despite evidence against it, right? And that doesn't mean that the people that hold on to those antiquated beliefs that don't make sense anymore, it truly does not mean they are stupid. It truly doesn't. It's as much of an emotional thing. That's the most inaccurate word I could have used. It's less of an emotional response, an intellectual response, as it is an emotional response, right? It is incredibly hard for us to give up our established beliefs, whether those are beliefs that we as a biologist hold about biology when a scientific paradigm shift occurs, or when a political paradigm shift occurs. It is a hard moment to confront the fact that something you believed so hard isn't true, right? Some people can't even get past that, right? That happens too. Some people can never shake that. It's hard. It's really, really hard. But once we get through it, we will likely get to what's called ecological modernization. In other words, we're going to have to stop prioritizing capitalism and put ecology first, right? So the environment is going to have to be what comes first. And if people are still choosing to use capitalistic models, they're going to have to factor the health and well-being of ecosystems into their cost of doing business. And the reason for that is that humans understand their personal experiences much better than they understand large-scale phenomena. So thus, once ideas change, people's actions will reshape the material conditions. What the hell does that mean? Well, people say things a lot, well, that's just how you do business. Well, when people talk about just how you do business, they're talking about how they were taught to do business by the person that taught them how to do business, and everyone that they see doing business is doing it all just the same way. That's part of the paradigm shift, right? This ecological modernization. So we are going to have to transition from simple modernization that does not take the environment into account to ecological modernization that does take the environment into account. And if we're going to continue using capitalism, it will be modernization that makes being friendly to the environment profitable too. You want to be capitalist, you want to do that into the future, you're going to have to find a way to make money and also fix the environment, which is a big thing. And then, of course, we're going to examine all of that in our coming lectures. If that makes you a little bit excited, hey, these are big, great, cool ideas. We do have some lectures before the course is ending to talk about maybe how some of that would look like. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye.